Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official audio show of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, the Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So here we are at episode 45 of the Hall of Fame show, and Evan Nolan and I, we've got quite a bit to talk about. A baseball Hall of Famer named Tony LaRussa, you may have heard of him. Hall of Fame manager, new manager of the Chicago White Sox, played the Do You Know Who I Am card. But it wasn't just the Do You Know Who I Am card. It's Do You Know That I'm a Hall of Famer card, and showed the ring while getting pulled over for a DUI. I think this is a first. I don't ever remember hearing about this. I'm sure it's happened before, but isn't this kind of interesting? White Sox fans, you've really got a gem here ahead of you, don't you? In a couple weeks' time, the Pro Football HOF Fame is going to announce their semi-finalists. We did our mock committee, but that's what we wanted to sort of see go through to the next round. What do we think is going to happen? Evan and I make our prognostications as to which 25 people we think that they're going to select. And we closed off with Tom Heinsohn, who I mispronounced, as you'll hear later. Look, I'm from Toronto. I'm not a Celtics guy. Yeah, I should have known that better. But Evan sort of gave a retrospective of this legendary figure in the world of Boston basketball. Without further ado, let's bring in Evan. Evan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, my friend?
Not too bad, not too bad. I might even have a little mini rant that I think you're going to like to kick off. But
wow.
Yeah.
Well, before you get to that, can I actually do something I almost never do?
Absolutely.
I am going to offer a mostly apology to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You said you were able to watch it. I haven't, unfortunately. I don't get HBO down here, and the usual means of piracy, let's just say, no one's uploaded that to my usual channels or of obtainment. So.
And I take it that service is called Piracy of the Caribbean.
Damn it! How the hell am I going to beat that for the rest of the show? Me.
It just came to me. I wish I could say I had thought that up ahead of time. No, that just popped in my head. But anyway, so to the Rock Hall, you and I were both very concerned about the fact that there weren't going to be any presentations and the fact that Scarlett Johansson's involved. Mm-hmm. But it ended up actually being really good. Any documentaries, which I know you weren't able to see, because I think you said they uploaded the speeches.
Yeah.
Any documentaries.
Yeah, YouTube, as of this recording anyway, they've uploaded the induction speeches. Yes, so I saw that, but that's all I've been able to see.
But I have to say, like, the mini documentaries are really, really good. Even if they were a little bit whitewashed, like the last one they did was Whitney Houston. She was the anchor of the show, I suppose. They kicked off with the Doobie Brothers and ended with Whitney Houston. Mm-hmm. For Whitney, they did all the stuff, and they talked a little bit about the fact that she was booed at the NAACP Image Award.
Yes.
She thought too white. And, like, they brought up some stuff I didn't necessarily think they were going to bring up. But then they're like, and then she was gone too soon, and then really they talked about the demon she was fighting quickly, mm-hmm. and then moved on. And maybe if we're not here to praise someone, we're not going to go into the circumstances of their death that we all know. So there are a few things that are a little bit whitewashed. But generally, they were pretty good, and they covered some controversial topics, and it was good all around. I'm not gonna lie. And I have to say, the in memoriam section done super well. Unlike the CMA that decided not to do one at all. I don't know if you saw that.
No, but that actually reminded me of something. I keep saying that I want to read comments. We got a comment about in memoriam. From last week. Yeah. But maybe should we save that for the end, or?
No, go ahead, do it now.
Okay.
What's his comment?
All right, so it was a comment. Dun, 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 dun. Comment. Letters. We have letters. We get your letters from all over the world. That was my way of stalling. Did that seem natural to you? No?
Well, the problem is you needed to go, I was going to save this joke for later, but you needed to add 2 timpanies at the end to make it 30 seconds so you can copyright.
No. Yeah, well, not everything I come up with is a gem. All right, so this is from Rich Fitchie. During your Oscar talk, the one they left behind during the In Memoriam for me was Abe Vigoda. He was left out of The Godfather. Co-star Alex Rocco, who was Mo Green, was in there even though Vigoda played a much bigger role than Rocco. Great episode, keep up the great work. So, yeah, I mean, there's always one.
Wow.
I remember for me, John Candy got left behind on one. And that had a lot of Canadians upset.
Which is insane.
It's absolutely is insane. I think he only passed away a couple months prior, too. I have to look that up. But it wasn't like it was at the start of the year.
Right. Yeah, John Candy passed away March 4th of 94.
Okay, right. So then that would...
Yeah, when are the Oscars normally? Like February, right?
Oh, shit. Yeah, you know what, maybe. Yeah, maybe it was the year after. Well, still, I mean... I know there were people upset. I remember that.
Actually, hold on. No, hold on a second. No, they're March 21st of 94.
Oh, okay.
So he passed away 17 days ahead of time.
Okay.
So.
And they did know how to edit in 1994.
Are you sure? I don't think there was even a category. Like, death memorial editing, I don't think was a thing back then.
Oh, this could go dark so quick, couldn't it?
It could go very dark. So
yeah.
Anyway, I just want to say I'm sorry to hear that, and kind of using the thing about the 2 timpanis. That does tie into one other person who passed away this week, but isn't necessarily someone we care about for the Halls of Fame. But you know the 2 timpanis at the end of the Jeopardy theme song are there because that theme song is 28 seconds long.
Oh.
And you can't copyright something unless it's 30 seconds long. So they added the 2 timpani beats at the end to make it 30 seconds.
Well, look at that.
There you go. But yeah, my friend for far too short a time, as those who follow us may or may not know, that I was a contestant on Jeopardy back it filmed in 2011, but it aired in April of 2012.
Oh.
So I was a contestant on Jeopardy. And I did get to meet Alex Trebek, the late great Alex Trebek. Mine was the second game done that day, so I got to watch the first game, got called in the second game, was eliminated. I finished in top 3, but I always joke that I won the swimsuit competition. I definitely had the best story. I was on the show. It was a lot of fun. Kind of a lifelong dream, although it sucks when your lifelong dream you finish in 3rd. But I got to meet him. He, at the time, was limping on both sides.
Oh.
Yeah, he had, I don't know if you remember this, he'd had a bad leg anyway.
No, I didn't know that.
Someone broke into his hotel room, and he chased down a cat burglar, and in so doing, ripped his Achilles on the other leg. So he was basically limping on both sides. It's very hard for him to get around. But he was a nice guy and did question and answer with the audience who was watching. So the studio audience for that, by the way, like it's kind of a trapezoid. The big end of the trapezoid up at the top and the small end down at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And the trapezoid is divided into 2 parts with a wall in the middle. Or I'd say maybe 20% on one side of the wall, 80% on the other. The 80% are just the people on Sony lot coming to watch the taping. The 20% side are the actual contestants waiting to go on. You're segregated away from them. But he did a whole question and answer with everybody. My episode is well known, I guess, because in the middle of the episode, the props department played a joke on him. We had a question about like a tail fin on a fish, and all of a sudden a floating shark balloon came out in the middle, waving its tail, and came behind Trebek. So that scene has been on, or decently well known, I guess, amongst the J board, which is the Jeopardy boards. J exclamation point. There's a whole community that just discusses every Jeopardy game, which is not surprising.
Hey, I can't believe I never asked you this. Can you see the questions like we can, or you have to wait? You're pretty much doing everything from his sound, from him asking it.
No. So here's how that works. So the board looks exactly the same as you see it at home.
Right.
And there's categories and everything, and they get big so you can read them as he's reading them. But they essentially have while he's reading it, on the outside, which you can't see at home, there's a whole bunch of lights. Like remember in Press Your Luck where the board had the lights going all the way around?
Yeah.
The board for Jeopardy has that same thing. You just can't see it at home. And when he's reading the question, the lights are on. If you ring in when those lights are on, you lock yourself out for a quarter of a second. But once the lights go off, and apparently they have a program that knows his cadence and everything, and makes it so that the lights go off like within 0.004 of a second of him being done reading the question, that you can ring it at that point. So the important thing, if you're ever on Jeopardy, from what they tell us, is that if you're right-handed, you should hold the clicker in your left hand. And if you're left-handed, you should hold it in your right hand. And the reason for that is the difference in impulses from your brain to your dominant side versus your non-dominant side. It's enough that if you use your dominant side, you're more likely to lock yourself out than your non-dominant side. So you'll almost always see righties with the button in their left hand and lefties with it in their right hand, which is interesting on the show. Something else interesting, which was kind of cool, is they try and make everyone approximately the same height. So there's boxes behind those podiums that go up or down. Like if you're really tall, they'll sink into the floor, so that you are like approximately the same height as the other people for the shots. But yeah, it was really cool to be on that show, and he was super, super nice. We had a good conversation afterwards. It was kind of intimidating, like the question part, because what they do in the back is they have you write out 3 of your stories. And this is actually something that I picked up from Jeopardy, is they make you tell your story, and then they're like, cut it, make it shorter. So you have to make it entertaining, but still make it short enough that he can go to the next person. He can't be more than like 20 seconds long in your story. And he has 3 of them on the card. So you actually have no idea what he's going to ask you. You have a certain idea what could be. You don't actually know what question he's going to ask you or what he's going to ask you off the card. So
interesting.
So I mean, he was super nice. He's clearly beloved. I mean, there's very few people in the world as beloved probably as Alex Trebek universally, right? And he's an institution.
It'd be hard to
been
replace.
around for 36 years on that show. So I mean, it was kind of a shock because, I mean, we knew he was sick, but he said he'd recovered, and then apparently hadn't. So it's going to be a little weird, too, because they recorded shows through Christmas. So Christmas will be the last show that you'll see of Trebek. And they're going to have to find a new host and everything else. I don't know if it's going to be Ken Jennings. I know they brought him in to read some questions. I'm not sure how he'd be on that, although I think he's going to be on The Chase, which is going from the Game Show Network to, I think, ABC. I tried out for that a few years afterwards. I made it to the very last cut before getting on, so I could always try out for that one, I guess. But it'll be interesting to see who they replace him with. There's a petition going around, actually, today to replace him with LeVar Burton.
Okay. Yeah, why not?
I mean, he's about as universally loved. He taught millions of us to read, or like to love reading, on Reading Rainbow. I think LeVar Burton would be really good at it. I also saw a joking one saying we should just offer the job to Donald Trump just to see how that goes.
Wrong. Wrong.
Yeah. But he seems kind of irreplaceable, kind of ghoulish. Actually, how fast we're trying to replace him. Let's enjoy his memory and stuff, and worry about it coming up later. So I don't know. We'll see. The other thing now is I can actually be back on Jeopardy again. This is not the way I wanted that to happen. That there's a clause in everyone's contract saying that unless they specifically invite you back, you could not be on Jeopardy again as long as Alex was the host.
That's interesting, I guess. I wonder why.
I don't know. Maybe they just want. I mean, they only take 400 people a year out of 5,000 plus applicants. So maybe it's just give more people a chance to not keep having the same people. I don't know, but that was in there. So at this point, I guess all of us who have been on before can always apply again. So. Well, anyway, I'm going to miss him. I mean, he was a part of all of our lives for most of our lives, right? I don't remember Jeopardy. I mean, I guess, what's his name? Richard Dawson was the host at one point. I don't remember that.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Richard Dawson, then there was somebody else. But it was failing, and then Trebek took over. I mean, I know it's not something we normally talk about, but hell of a man and someone everyone's going to miss. And it may be the greatest Canadian of all time.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say.
I know Curtis Joseph was, someone they had on that list or whatever, but I would put Trebek up there, I think, above him. Oh, no, it was Ed Belfair. I'm sorry.
It was Ed Belfair. It was another, at least that one got into a Hockey Hall of Fame. Just for his mullet and beginning of a bald spot, which was ever so glorious. But it was great to hear that Trebek sort of treated, people well. Unlike my rant. And
I could only delay the thunder so long.
Tony LaRussa. I just have this to say. It's quite one thing when you're a celebrity or you're somebody, or whoever you think you are. And if you use when you get pulled over, do you know who I am card? Usually the answer is douchebag.
Mm-hmm.
This time, I've never seen, I guess, and this is pertinent to us, not just because Tony LaRussa is a Baseball Hall of Fame manager and soon to be employed again, maybe, depending on how this sort of all works out. He actually said, "I'm a Hall of Famer, see my ring, I'm legit." And just for those wondering what he got pulled over for, it was DUI in Arizona, 0.09, so it wasn't like he was sloshing all over the place, but, he got pulled over because he did something.
Yeah. And what's even more amazing is the White Sox knew about this at the time.
Yes.
Like when they hired him.
It's also not his first DUI.
It is not.
This is a time where sometimes people his age you almost have to take your test all over again. But this whole thing, I'm a Hall of Famer. Here's my ring. What the? How can we not talk about this complete goofball? This is our official, I know it's the Hall of Fame show. I don't want to say Hall of Shame because there's so many uses of the Hall of Shame. Just the Hall of Fools, maybe. He's our first inductee. I don't want to use Charlemagne the God's donkey of the day. But there's got to be something that we can sort of call this. This is just...
Yeah, the White Sox haven't exactly covered themselves in glory. I mean, they made the playoffs for the first time in a long time. They fired their manager. And then their fired manager was nominated for Manager of the Year, which he didn't win. But then they congratulated him on their Twitter feed. They was like, this is not a good look. And then LaRussa, knowing that a DUI, and said they're going to wait till the outcome of his DUI hearing, which I think is this week, to do anything about it. Like, couldn't you have just waited to the end of his DUI hearing anyway? Couldn't you, like, waited 20 days to figure it out?
Well, maybe they're covering their ass and they didn't know about it. And they're just saying that.
I don't know. And now Jose Abreu won the MVP today. And Jose Abreu is now emboldened to tell LaRussa to go stick it where the sun don't shine because he's an MVP. What are they going to do?
Well, I'm a Hall of Famer. See the ring? Jesus. This could be the makings of... I'm just trying to think of like what would be a bigger disaster. The only thing I can come up with is having Greta Thunberg be the host of a comedy show. So I don't think that would go over particularly well.
Probably not.
No. It's, should be someone who actually understands humor. And for those who says, well, look at her Twitter. She doesn't write it. Sorry, I just wanted to vent on that. There's no way she writes anything that's humorous because she doesn't know what it is.
This is a strange switch, my friend.
Well, it is. It is. It's just...
Let's just go back to making fun of Tony LaRussa. That's more fun.
That is more fun. That's also more appropriate.
Yeah. So, anyway, yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. It was a super unpopular move here in Chicago. Anyway, I have no idea what they're going to do with.
Well, he'll get a slap on the wrist, and then they're just going to plow through, and then a year from now, they're going to admit they made a mistake. Or we're both wrong, and the White Sox win the World Series.
Well, that may happen anyway. The White Sox are a pretty good team. By the way, I don't know if you saw this. Did you realize that when Bauer won the MVP, that was the first time Cincinnati, or not the MVP,
the Cy Young,
Young.
That blew my mind, too.
It's the first time a Reds pitcher had ever won a Cy Young award?
That's crazy that it took this long.
The Reds are like the oldest team, or the Phillies, I guess, are technically. But the Reds have been around since, like, before Cy Young was playing. And they never had a Cy Young award winner. That's amazing. So... anyway,
it's. I mean, some things are just weird. I mean, I'm working. I just began preliminary work on the top 50 Toronto Maple Leafs. And coming up with the top Leaf was so hard. And unless I'm mistaken, only one guy has ever won the Hart Trophy, and that's probably the one guy who shouldn't have, in Ted Kennedy, who was coming off an year, and it just seemed to be sort. And if I remember right, even. It was almost, they called it like a Lifetime Achievement Award. So you take that away, unless I'm mistaken, and I could be wrong, he's the only Maple Leaf to win the Hart Trophy. And it's not like we're talking about a team that hasn't won a lot of Stanley Cups. Yes, neither of you and I were alive when that happened, but the Hart Trophy's been around since the early 30s. I check it out. I could be way off on that, but
I'm double checking right now.
Yeah, it's what I think is I've just begun work, sort of like categorizing everybody.
Mm-hmm. So there have only been two Maple Leafs actually.
Oh, who's the second? So
Ted Kennedy, not the one who I used to work for Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
With the Ted Kennedy hockey player won at 54-55 and 40-44, someone named Dave Pratt, who was a defenseman.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yep. And Pratt's not even going to be in the top 25 when this is all said and done.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the last one who won was 1955. That was, I mean, what, 65 years ago? No, how old are you? 75 years ago. Am I doing that math right? That can't be right.
What, the Leafs?
No, 65 years ago. It's been 65 years since they've had a Hart Trophy.
And it's not like there hasn't been some good players. That's a very, very difficult award to win. And think about this, too. They won 4 Stanley Cups in the 60s. And that team was loaded. Just absolutely loaded.
The Edmonton Oilers have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well,
10. 2 of them by 8 of them by the same guy. So wow, kind of crazy.
It is. I mean, that's sort of why we do these sort of things. I guess the other thing, which is kind of our main event really today, we did that fun show that we did. Well, we didn't broadcast it live, but we did that over Zoom, where a group of us picked who we think should be the semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. At the end of the month, they're going to come up with the semifinalists. What we haven't done, you and I, is actually predicted that. So this is not who we want. This is who we think they're going to go with.
And as always, we did so much preparation for this.
This took me 10 minutes, honestly. Because there's no point. I'll walk through my process right now.
Yep, go ahead.
All right, so you knock off 10 people right away. Because if you were a finalist last year, you're going to be at least a semifinalist this year. So that's
correct.
Reggie Wayne, Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler, Sam Mills, Zach Thomas, Bryant Young, Alan Faneca, John Lynch, Torrey Holt, Richard Seymour. So that leaves me 15 spots. I took 4 out right away because there's 4 first ballot people who I think are locks as semis. Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, Jared Allen. I can see you concur with all that so far?
Yeah, there's nothing to discuss. We got the 4 first ballots and the 10 people left over.
Okay, so this leaves 11 spots. I figure that there's a few of these returning semifinalists that will probably, now this is sort of where the lock sort of comes off the door, but I think Rondé Barber, I'm penciling him in. I think they're going to get
he's been semifinalist. Yep. Sorry, he's been semifinalist 3 times already. Right. So it's a pretty good sign he'll probably be back.
Same with Hines Ward. He's in the same category, actually, even stronger category, because I think he's been a semifinalist, might be 4 times.
Yep, I have my spreadsheet out. So he has been 4 times, as has another one I'm sure you mentioned, Darren Woodson.
Okay. So then I suspect that Darren Woodson, Steve Tasker, Clay Matthews are my 3 likely semifinalists that they're going to return. There's not a lot of reason to think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, again, Darren Woodson 4 times semifinalist. Mm-hmm. Clay Matthews 4 times semifinalist. Steve Tasker 7 times semifinalist. So.
And they're returning.
I'm sorry, we had 14. So Barber's 15, Matthews 16, Tasker 7, Ward 18, Woodson 19. So there's 6 spots.
Right. So there's basically 6 spots that I don't want to say could go to anyone, but there's a small pool of people I think who have a shot at it. Fred Taylor was a semifinalist last year. I don't think he will be this year.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who you said. There was a break on the line for a second.
Fred Taylor.
No, I don't think Fred Taylor will be either, no.
But I do think Ricky Waters will be. But I don't feel as strong about it. But I think as much as you, I, and the rest of our mock committee want to stump for Sean Alexander, it's not what we're pushing for, it's what they've already done that we're sort of going by this.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a running back. Mm-hmm. We know that. Because there were 3 running backs who were semifinalists last year. The only one who made it to the finals was Aaron James, and he got himself a leg. So that leaves the 2 of them there. The other ones coming in that we had, I mean, we all love Sean Alexander, but the other ones on this list, Sean Alexander, Mike Allstott, Tiki Barber, Corey Dillon, Ward Dunn, Eddie George, Priest Holmes, Steven Jackson, Jamal Lewis, Lorenzo Neal, Fred Taylor, Herschel Walker, Ricky Waters are the ones who might come under consideration. But since Waters is already there, it would surprise me if he wasn't back again.
Right, and if they go with a second running back, I think it'll either be Alexander or Dillon. Or maybe Priest Holmes. All the rest, they're not going to have a shot this year, is what I think.
Probably not. I mean, yeah, probably not. But now you never know. I mean, who knows? Maybe Herschel Walker rises up and gets on there.
Well, and also, too, it's not that they're all in a room. They're just all submitting this. So they're not looking at each other to balance this out. Not that they even have to. I mean, like, frankly, I think you just put forth the best people available. But some people might not think like that. Don't know. But they don't necessarily. They might have a pretty good idea what everyone else is thinking, having been in that room. But we have 3 new committee members, which is sort of like why I thought maybe we might see, although I'd rather see Randall Cunningham. I'm going to go out on my limb. This is my bold one. Donovan McNabb might get a semifinalist spot. That's my out on the limb spot pick.
Okay. I'm going to let you keep going, and I'll give you my choices later.
Yeah.
But why don't you finish yours off?
Sure.
You got 4 more spots.
Yeah. So I believe that Steve Wisniewski is going to get another shot, and he doesn't have a lot more left. He wasn't a semifinalist last year, but he's been in this conversation before. I also think Henry Ellard could be that other guy.
Okay.
And I had Neil Smith as a possibility.
Okay. Interesting. Well, there's an obvious one you've left out here.
Who's that?
Patrick Willis.
Oh, did I not put him there? Okay, sorry. He should have been on my returning semis.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Willis was a semifinalist last year and wasn't a finalist, to the shock of all of us.
Yeah. So he's on that. He's on that list. So then that was my 25 because I left off one.
Okay. All right. So there you go. So you have 19. We had both have 19. We agree on. Patrick Willis is my 20th. I don't think there's any.
Well, yeah, then that's my 20th also because he would have been on my returning semi.
Yeah. Yeah. And I fully expect Willis to be a finalist this year as well, not just make it to the semifinalist, but also be a finalist.
Mm-hmm.
So, just again looking back, the other semifinalists last year, the 5 spots that we're discussing are Carl Banks, who's now off.
Yep, permanently off the list.
Simeon Rice. Yep. So Simeon Rice. It was his second time as a semifinalist. Fred Taylor, we mentioned. Ricky Waters, we mentioned. And Steve Tasker. Well, no. Yeah, Tasker's 7th. I'm missing somebody. One. Regardless. All right. So I think there will be a running back. I think it will be Ricky Waters. Mm-hmm. It would not surprise me if Sean Alexander showed up as a second running back. But I think Ricky Waters will be on this list if there's only one running back. So Simeon Rice was a little bit of a surprise to show up. It's been a couple of years since he'd been on there. I mean, not that huge a surprise, but someone else who had been on the list the same year Simeon Rice had made it the first time is Leslie O'Neal, who I'm very high on. I think it could be Rice, it could be O'Neal. I'm just going to give it to O'Neal. Mm-hmm. As a quick change up because Rice had made it last time. So we've gotten to that point. We're going to have another offensive line on that we don't have here now, just because there's so many good offensive. It's like the offensive lineman list. We went through it when we were talking about.
Oh my God, it's disgusting.
Process.
Yeah,
the offensive lineman list, like. My first 3 cuts, because there were 19 originally who are nominated. My first 3 cuts are DeBrickashaw, Ferguson, Kevin Glover, and Jordan Gross. All of whom are pretty good players. Mm-hmm. And Chris Sneed, who's also a pretty good player. So someone else is going to end up on this list. And I know it's Logan Mankin's first time, but he's been talked about as a Hall of Famer a while now.
I can see it.
The only guy probably who's going to make it from the Patriots offensive line. All the guys who played offensive line for the Patriots during the Brady time period, Mankins is the only one I think has a shot at the Hall. I think Mankins actually ends up as a semifinalist. I don't think he makes the finalist list, but I think he will end up as a semifinalist this time through. For that, it's a crapshoot. I think we do end up with another. Well, I mean, we have Manning on there, so we may end up with another quarterback. If we do, I think it's more likely to be Cunningham than McNabb.
I think it should be, but I'm just, there's always one that I go, huh? He's my huh.
Well, so I leaves me one spot left. I think, we already have Hines Ward and Reggie Wayne and Calvin Johnson on the semifinal list. I think it's hard to get another wide receiver through, as much as I would love to see Henry Ellard on this list.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think any tight ends make it.
No. Well, I'll tell you the two that I thought could still go through. Well, Simeon Rice is one. Two, I think they could look at. I didn't slash him in my first year eligibility, but it wouldn't shock me if Jeff Saturday got a look.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to decide. Like, as much as we love the argument for Nalen, the question is, do they? Because there's no other centers.
Right.
Like, there's the three centers. So what I was actually looking at was, are they going to put another offensive lineman on here? If they do, we got the three centers. We got Nalen, we got Saturday. We got, more than that. We got Matt Burke, Olin Kreutz, and Kent Hull is somebody else who's been on the peripheries for a while, who wouldn't shock me if all of a sudden he's there. So I really wanted the last person to be Kevin Williams. I'm going to say it, though. The last person I think is going to be Kevin Williams. He has to be on there. Like, if they get into analytics at all, he is on this list of guys. Let me get the actual number here. Like I said, the average Hall of Famer, using the analytics system they have, it's 100 rating, right? He's 103.28, meaning that he should be a Hall of Famer, which also means that he should be on the list. So I have to go with the fact that maybe somebody and some of these newer folks will look at some analytics, and using that, it's going to be a lot easier for the lazy people. Just be like, oh, that guy's over 100. So I'll put Kevin Williams as my last person.
Okay. And so it'll be interesting to see which one this happens. So obviously our reaction show to that will be the first week of December, I believe. So 2 weeks from now.
Probably the first week of December, if they're on the same time schedule. Although they seem to be. Unlike the Hockey Hall's not doing it at all, or the Rock Hall essentially said that they're going to make their announcement in January. They normally do that in October. Mm-hmm. So,
which does give us time to put together our mock rock committee.
It does.
So that might be something that we've got to look at. Anyone listening who wants to be a part of that, just send us a message. Pretty easy to find. That should definitely be a fun one. And and it's not a prediction. We are going to act as if we are the committee putting together the ballot, which is why this stuff is so much fun.
Yep. So, so essentially so let me just go through again. Your semifinals are
okay. Wayne, Baselli, Butler, Mills, Thomas, Young, Faneca, Lynch, Holt, Seymour, Manning, Woodson, Calvin, Allen, Barber, Matthews, Tasker, Ward, Woodson, Willis. So that was 20. So then my last five are Ellard, McNabb, Wisniewski, Waters, and I had 24. I did need the 25th. It's going to be Rice. I don't think it should be.
Rice?
Yeah.
Okay, so my first 20 are the same as yours, so I won't bother to go through that whole list again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going with Mankins, Leslie O'Neill, Kevin Williams. Pat Williams was his teammate right next to him for all those years. Waters, and I'll say Cunningham.
Okay, so we pretty much have we're on the same on 21, and I don't think either of us will care if one of us goes 25 for 25.
Yeah, no,
we won't.
No, we won't because it's impossible. There's 130 candidates. 20 of them are almost definitely going to be there. Although, watch someone like all of a sudden they're going to be like, yeah, we're just going to completely drop Rondé Barber from the list. You're like, that's weird. Why did that happen?
Well, there's this punter they really want to take a good look at. In fact, he wasn't even on the ballot. It's former New York Giant Ali Haji Sheikh. I just love that name, Ali Haji Sheikh.
It's a pretty good name.
It is. So, it's a phenomenal name.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what else we got this week? What else is going on?
Well, there's the passing of Tom Heinz. I never pronounce his name right. Tom Heinsohn.
Tommy Heinsohn.
Heinsohn. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I have a lot to say about that. Do you want to just? I know we talked about the Maple Leafs earlier. I was going to transition into this, but I thought we wanted to get to the main topic.
Yeah.
But Heinsohn, because I have a lot to say. Do you want to say something about Howie Meeker?
Howie Meeker is someone that anyone my age or a little bit older and slightly younger, he was one of the voices of Hockey Night in Canada. And what that was back then, CBC, which is basically our version of BBC, would broadcast two back-to-back hockey games. It always started off with the Leaf game if you're in Ontario, and if you're in Quebec, it'd always be the Habs. And then you go out west, and then it'd usually be the Oilers beating up on somebody. And this was just sort of like a voice for calling a lot of the games early for forever. Then it would go to Don Cherry, who was another interesting character. But Hockey Night in Canada was such a part of our fabric. When CBC lost actually that national Saturday night contract, it became to Sportsnet. I believe it was Sportsnet. I think it was Sportsnet. There was panic within, not panic, but concern within the country, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the theme song? Probably don't even know there was a big theme song for Hockey Night in Canada. Dun, 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 dun.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. I'm sure there's a lot of Canadians listening right now saying, like, Jesus, Buchner, just shut up. And you'd be right. I should have. That was not a great version. But I specifically remember call-in radio talking about this possible tragedy that the song won't be carried over. It was carried over, I believe. It didn't really last for all that long because most young Canadians just don't give a shit. But at the time, it was a really big deal. And they brought Cherry over from that, who just got fired. Was it this year or last year?
Last year, I think.
Last year, yeah. So, a pretty important voice. One that I didn't put. I'm kind of going to segue out of this briefly, and you'll segue us back in, because it's just a bit of self-promotion. Evan and I, you may have heard that we're doing the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. One of the categories will be announcers. As Meeker's a Canadian, he's not part of that, but announcers are a really big deal. We're going to be super excited when this all comes out. And other than Tom, do we have another big death that we want to talk about? Because there's one.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
There's kind of.
What were you saying?
Well, there's kind of one thing on the U.S. Hall that I wanted to sort of bring up, if I could, just because it's really fresh in my mind. And
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
just go ahead and do it now.
All right, perfect.
We can get to Tommy after. I have a lot to say about Tommy.
All right, cool. So One of the people who was on our mock committee for football, Jack Silverstein, I sent him off the list because he's not going to be able to participate, but he's a historian based in Chicago, and I really valued his opinion in the brief time I got to talk to him. And he asked me, so, like, you know, you've got a lot of preliminary nominees here for baseball, football. Like, are you sure you want to do that? Because, like, what do you want this to be? And I'm thinking, I don't know what I want this to be. I don't have an idea. The only thing I know for sure is that I want it to be completely open to the public and every vote counts. And that it's going to be transparent so that you'll know who got the most. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be alive. I can't tell you, whoever's listening right now, well, I don't know what American sports means to you. It's weird that this is a passion project for a Canadian who lives in Barbados, but this is something I'm very passionate about. Evan and I, we bond over a lot of the same interests, but what this means to me won't mean the same to him, won't mean the same to Jack, won't mean the same to our regular contributor, Vinny Laspinuso, who's 21 and is a savant when it comes to sports history. I know what some things will mean more to him. It might mean more. It doesn't matter what it means to you. That's what you're going to tell us what this hall is going to be. I'm not going to tell you what this hall is. Evan's not going to tell you what this hall is. I'm speaking for you, but I hope you agree with me on this. You're going to tell us what this hall is.
Yeah, and he is right. It's going to be heavy in, well, I mean, let's just back up. Think about, you and I are old enough, and Vinny was not even really alive. He was, a year old when the Sports Century series came out on ESPN. Mm-hmm. And they had the 100 greatest athletes of the 20th century, one of which was a horse. Actually, I think two of which were horses, right? I think both Citation and Secretariat made that list.
Man of War wasn't in it?
But Man of War, maybe there was three of them. I don't even remember. I went back over the list because when we were thinking about this, I went back over the list and I grabbed it from there and then eliminated all horses because I eliminated all horses, Canadians, and Joe Namath. And then it kept going my list.
Horses, Canadian, and Joe Namath walked into a bar. One of them hit on Susie Kobler.
Yeah. So I use that as a basis for stuff, but that list is heavily tilted towards particularly baseball and football. Well, baseball, football, and basketball. There isn't actually a single non-Canadian hockey player on that list. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it turns out. I honestly think that the first classes like Jesse Owens and Muhammad Ali, and I hope Jim Thorpe, you know my opinions on Jim Thorpe. If I could pick, I'll say it out loud, if I could pick one person to put in the Hall of Fame, if I had to start the Hall of Fame with one single person, I would pick Jim Thorpe. So there's a lot of people like that who are going to be on there, but I have a heavy feeling we're going to have a lot of Babe Ruth and Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. And if we have those five out of the first 20, are you going to be shocked, or if they're 5 or 6 or 7 baseball players? No, I'm not going to be shocked. Like if we have, because we're now we decided officially, since this is the first class to be next year, that we're only going to do people born 1970 and before for the first nominees. That way, it's a clean break. We're not doing 71, where some people are going to be 50, some aren't at the time of voting and induction and everything. Just make it simple. If you're born in 70, it's 50 years. You're 50 years old already when we're going to be voting. So we'll go from there. So, I mean, for basketball, you can do a whole basketball one too, with the guys over 50. Like Jordan and Russell and Chamberlain and Jerry West and, just Dr. J, and, you can just keep going with those guys too, and you could have 6 or 7 of those guys. It wouldn't surprise me to have a same hockey in the first class.
Right.
Because who's your first one? Mike Modano?
In terms of hockey?
Mike Modano's probably good.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Well, Mike Modano, and again, sort of like why you and I love this, my vote and your vote means the exact same as everyone else's. I don't get a super vote. I'm not a super delegate. I just learned what those are.
Right. Yes. Our own job here is to make sure that the list you're voting from is a proper list. Once we have the proper list out there, and we don't have somebody who just absolutely doesn't belong, like a pet project, then it's up to everyone else to decide. But again, like I said, I don't think there's going to be a single hockey player in this. I think we're going to have more boxers than hockey players for like the decade of this list, probably. I mean, Mike Modano is probably the greatest American hockey player. Mike Modano, Brett Hull. Who else you got? John LeClaire?
Chris Chelios to me though is he would be my first one. There is Frank Brimsek, who was, I believe, the first American Heart winner. Going way back in the day, but he doesn't mean anything to people.
When is the public going to vote Frank Brimsek into the American Hall of Fame?
They're not. Well, you know what? Maybe they are.
They're not. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe there's a big Frank Brimsek contingent out there we just don't know about. But my point is, it may be skewed towards certain things at the beginning. I mean, when you did your fictitious athlete Hall of Fame, the first class that we did, you put Rocky in right away, but the first class was entirely baseball.
Yep, that's how it worked out. Not chosen by me.
Not necessarily want it that way. But there were more famous baseball people that people wanted in there, like. It was Roy Hobbs and
Crash Davis.
What else is it? Roy Hobbs, Crash Davis, and Wild Thing Vaughn, and then Bob Uecker from Major League as the contributor. Like, it's hard to argue with any of those guys, right?
No, and then it was almost near a hockey sweep with Slapshot because the Hansons and Reggie Dunlop went in the same year.
And was Gordon Bombay in that class, or was he later?
Later.
Okay, was it Mr. Miyagi the second year? I think it was.
Yes. No.
Yeah. So we have no.
I don't remember. I only run and created the thing.
Yeah, but it's been a few years now, so we're all older. It's hard to remember all these things. But regardless, there have been more people from karate in your fictitious athlete Hall of Fame than basketball at this point.
Yeah.
So. Things are just going to go the way they're going to go, and I don't feel like let's pick a seventh. Like, let's say there's a seventh baseball player, and that baseball player ends up being, I don't know, I'll just say Pete Rose. Like, there's a groundswell of people behind Pete Rose, and he ends up in the top 20 somehow of the American Athlete Hall of Fame when he can't get in the Baseball Hall of Fame, because who knows, they have a whole voting contingent out there I suspect exists, but like Pete Rose eventually taking out the cheating scandal is eventually going to get in.
Well, also,
so it doesn't bother me necessarily what order they get in. That first class is important, but it doesn't bother me as much.
And we also don't know what fan base will get behind it. I mean, like, hypothetically, let's say the diving community goes nuts. Is Greg Louganis a first ballot Hall of Famer? Really, it'd be strange, but is it out there? He was a legend at what he did.
Yeah. If Martina Navratilova, all of a sudden tennis all unites behind Martina Navratilova over, I don't know, yeah, I mean, Pete Sampras is probably up there, but like the third or fourth person who you would think for tennis, and he gets in there, not going to freaking win. I mean, Martina Navratilova, in my opinion, is probably going to be the first woman elected to this thing, although it probably should be Babe Didrikson-Zaharias.
That's who I'm hoping.
Or Althea Gibson, and there are a few others out there, some of the track stars.
Yeah, Wilma Rudolph is another one. Yeah. But we don't know.
I mean, there are.
We don't know who's going to get behind it. We don't know what demographic. I mean, I know what demographic usually visits the site, and that's predominantly male.
Right.
Does that necessarily mean they wouldn't vote for a female? Well, you and I would. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Babe Didrikson-Zaharias will be one of my 25.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean, she's a 3-sport athlete and
Yes.
one of the best at all 3 sports. So, yeah, that's hard to. That's hard to go against. It's just she's spent from so long ago. It's be interesting if people know who she is. A lot of younger people, if they're voting.
Well, well, that's also the fun of this. We don't know. It's
Right.
completely open again to all of you. Once we know how this ends, you will see percentages. There will be no trying to figure out what the rankings were. We're not going to spare the feelings. So if somebody got skunked, we'll tell you that. And then maybe that's a learning experience.
And if they made it that far, they'll probably be up again the next year if they got skunked.
Possibly, or just something we learned from. I mean, that's why we're having a quick chat next week. But this whole, I wanted to get that out because that message that Jack sent me has just been sticking in my head, ever since then. What I'm trying to think, okay, well, I'm one half of the person creating it. What do I want?
Yeah. I will say, Jack raised a very good point. I just personally don't think it matters. I think our job is to put out there the best group of representative athletes we can, and then the chips fall where they may, right? We just want to make sure we're not putting out, let's go back to baseball, we're not putting out Spike Owen. The first, although I think Spike Owen's Canadian. No, I think about it. I picked a Canadian, but you know what I mean. Or I don't know. How about Jeff Fry? I'm going back to middle infielders for the Red Sox.
You're just thinking of whatever baseball cards coming up to your mind.
Yeah, the guy had a long career as a good player, but he has no business being here. That is not our job. Our job is to make sure we're putting the
Spanky
best out
LaValliere,
that we can.
Former Pittsburgh Pirates catcher. Sid Bream.
Oh, Sid Bream, the fastest man of 1993. Was 91? That's 91. What am I saying? That he came around home because they played the first World Series between the Twins and Braves in 91. So,
but yeah, we could go on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm glad we got that out in the air. That's my job. I think is just to make sure we have a good list for people to choose from.
Cool.
And then the chips for them.
Sounds good. So you've got, I guess, a little bit of a tribute to Fallen Man in Boston.
Let me just get the last couple people all the way, and now go into Tommy.
Yeah, sure.
So we had 4 other people I thought we should at least mention who passed away. Going back to hockey, Jim Nielsen. Played mostly for the Rangers, is in the Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame. Passed away at the age of 79. When they did the 100 Greatest Rangers book, he was number 42 on the all-time Rangers list. He had played over 1,000 games in the NHL. Ended up with 69 goals and 299 assists for 368 points. But he's a defenseman, so I mean that's sort of what you'd expect.
Mm-hmm.
But he passed away at the age of 79 earlier this week. We also lost Ken Spears, who is important. He is the guy who came up with Alvin and the Chipmunks, among others, who's in our Hall of Fame. He's the producer of a whole bunch of shows, including Mr. T, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Superman, one of the creators of Scooby-Doo, was on the animation team at Hanna-Barbera. So he passed away earlier this week, the age of 82. So he died from Lewy body dementia.
Oh.
Which does not sound like a lot of fun.
No, isn't that the thing that Robin Williams got diagnosed with, and he just decided he's not going to go on before he committed suicide, I believe.
Yeah, that is correct. So just remind me not to get that, okay?
I can remind you, but if you get it, you might forget.
Yeah. Len Barry passed away, also born Leonard Borisov. He had a couple of pretty big hits in the early 60s with, he's the lead singer of the Dovels. They had Bristol Stomp, Hully Gully Baby, You Can't Sit Down in like the early 60s. He passed away earlier this week at the age of 78. We also lost Bones Hillman, the New Zealand bassist for Midnight Oil. Born Wayne Stevens in New Zealand. He passed away. He was the bassist for Midnight Oil up until his death early this week of cancer at the age of 62 in Milwaukee. So that's about everybody I had. And the Beige Mistress was quiet this week. Unless she moved on to like bad Mets middle relievers of the late 1960s. There's 3 of those passed away this week.
Going back to the basis of Midnight Oil, I think it's safe to say, because I don't remember what he looked like, but I know he's not the least attractive member of that band. Okay.
I don't know if either of us are people to be judging the attractiveness of men, but
that may be true. But as I've said in a previous show, I'm a hard 4. That might have a double meaning, and that still has Peter Garrett beat.
Probably true.
Yes. So.
And finally, let me just talk about the closest thing to a sports person who could pass away that would feel like losing a member of my family, Tom Heinsohn. Mm-hmm. So Tommy Heinsohn is the one thread that connects all the championships and pretty much all the teams in Celtics history. He went to Holy Cross, which is out in Worcester, Massachusetts. He's the second greatest player from Holy Cross. The number one is actually another guy you may have heard of named Bob Cousy, who is still alive and was actually next door neighbors. My dad was the kicker on the football team and the catcher on the baseball team at Holy Cross. They were the same class. And they had dorm rooms directly next to each other for all 4 years at Holy Cross. Holy Cross, by the way, at that point was $800 a year, room, board, and tuition. They had a little old lady clean your room for you. So my dad passed back in 2012. Cousy's still going now. He's 92. But Tommy was the next guy. So the Holy Cross Crusaders won the NCAA tournament in 1950 with Cousy. They won the 54 They won the 54 NIT with Tommy Heinsohn. And the NIT back then was as big a tournament as the NCAA's. And then they haven't won anything since. But back at that point, the NBA had regionalism. So if there's a really good college sports star in your region, you could just claim him as your own. It wouldn't go through the draft. So the Celtics claimed Heinsohn as part of this. They also had a draft pick that year who you may have heard of, named Bill Russell.
Yeah, I heard he was pretty good.
57 was a pretty good year for the Celtics. So they brought the two of them on. Heinsohn was Rookie of the Year, and they won the championship in 57, their first. Heinsohn would go on to win 8 championships in 9 years before retiring. He retired with less than 10 years in the league, which is what you did back then when Heinsohn, let's be honest, was not a gym rat. He was kind of out of shape, and traveling coach with those terrible shoes took wear and tear on your body. So Russell was the player coach for a while, and then he left, and Heinsohn took over. And Heinsohn was the coach of the teams that won in the 70s with Collins and Havlicek and guys like that. And so he won 8 as a player, 2 as a coach. And then in 1980, he got fired by Auerbach after the team had – the late 70s were not good for the Celtics. Auerbach got Bill Fitch in there, and the Celtics drafted a guy named Larry Bird. But at that point, Heinsohn became an announcer. and he and Mike Gorman did their first game together in 1980. And they did their last game together in March of this year before COVID happened. They were together as partners for 40 years, which I know it's the longest NBA history. It may be the longest in sports history in the United States. I'm not sure of that, but I know it is the longest in the NBA. And at that point, Tom Heinsohn became... Tom Heinsohn was one of the most homer announcers of all time. Like, the referees could never call anything right. He gave Tommy points for hustle. He was generally like, there was a time he was doing, like in the early 80s, he was away from Boston for a little bit doing national broadcast with CBS. And I had to be like, he actually did the 82 finals between the Lakers and Sixers. It had to be ridiculous to them that the color commentator on those games was Tom Heinsohn. Like, I can't imagine being a Lakers or a Sixers fan and being like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is our color commentator. But Tommy was essentially like, he was with the Celtics from 57 through 2020. That's crazy amount of time. That's 63 years he was associated with the team. And
would it be safe to say that he would still be employed by them had he not passed?
I'm sorry?
Would he still be employed, or was this his last year well, obviously because he died, but... No,
so Tommy had stopped doing road games.
Okay.
So he wasn't traveling anymore. But he did all the home games. His wife died, how many years ago now? 7, 8, maybe longer than that. The little redhead from Needham, he used to call her. She passed away several years ago, and the Celtics were really his sanity in many ways. And again, I know that every other team's fan base had to hate Tommy Heinsohn because he was such a homer. But we loved him for it. And legitimately, 3-4 generations of Celtics fans associate Tommy Heinsohn with the team. He's the only thread that goes from not even like Ed McCauley, like even further back than Russell, all the way through Jason Tatum. And he's essentially, he had 3 great careers with the Celtics. And he never went to another team. He was always our guy. But he was a Hall of Fame basketball player. He was a 2-time winning coach. And he was a hell of a color guy for 40 years. And not that many people who have done that.
In the Hall of Fame for both.
Died, I'm sorry?
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach, and college basketball Hall of Famer.
Yep, and he deserves to be deserves all 3 accolades. But he was also probably like playoff Rondo. We always joke about. There's regular season playoff. Regular season Heinsohn kind of got through games. Playoff Heinsohn, Game 7 of 62, he had 37 points and 28 rebounds in a Game 7. So he took it up a level in the playoffs and just kind of threw everything into it. But just one of those ones I heard he died. It was like losing your favorite uncle, or like your favorite like grandfather type figure. I don't know if I'll ever feel the way about another person in sports the way I felt about Tommy. Johnny Pesky's probably the closest. And my ideas of Johnny Pesky are colored a little bit by the fact the first Red Sox game I ever went to, Pesky handed me a baseball. Just the fact that somebody on the field who handed me a baseball was amazing. And then, of course, I went home and started playing with it like I did with all the other balls, so I didn't have it special. The ball caught off the bat of Rob Deere, the foul ball, and somebody special. That's the one that John Pesky made. But honestly, I don't think there's just nobody anymore who's going to be with the same team for 60-some-odd years. Even Vince Scully was with the Dodgers all those years, but he only had the one career. Vince Scully was a ridiculous announcer, but he was never a player and he was never a coach.
Right.
There's pretty much no one else who I'm trying to think, maybe Phil Rizzuto. I don't know if Phil Rizzuto was ever a coach, but he at least Hall of Fame player and a long-time announcer with the Yankees.
Right.
But, yeah, one of the most, like, comforting things is listening to Celtics games and listening to Tom Heinsohn complain about the referees and give Tommy points for hustle and try and convince us that Greg Steamsma was comparing him to Wilt Chamberlain, and that crazy comparisons he make when somebody was doing well. That Walter McCarty's entire career and loving him was based on Tommy Heinsohn when he ever make a corner three going, I'm Walter. So yeah, it's just sad. It's a passing. It's one of those things you knew was going to happen at some point, but it's a passing that it's just someone who can't ever really be replaced. Yeah, and to answer your question, he probably would have been back on broadcast this year.
Okay.
If we were playing a new season now, he probably would have been back on it, at least for the home games, or at least some of the home games. So, because like I said, his last one was, I think, the 14th of March. I think it was the day before COVID shut everything down.
Yeah,
so he was still on the air.
We don't have anything like that in Toronto. I mean, if for no other reason, just the only team that's been around that long was the Maple Leafs, and the ownership, and I know I've talked about this before, was just so bad in the 80s. It ran off a lot of people who might have stuck around to be part of that organization. And like
right.
we mentioned though with Howie Meeker, and just most people think of Leaf games, you know, when you're my age or older, called nationally, so not necessarily, you know, from a local perspective. So I don't believe there's any Toronto person right now that could even come close to that.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm trying to think of my Boston career. We had Milt Schmidt with the Bruins, who was a Hall of Fame player and the architect of a lot of those great 70s teams. He was a general manager who was still dropping pucks, at least when he was in his mid-90s. I think he passed away in 95 a couple of years ago. I know he passed away a couple of years ago. But he wasn't broadcaster. So there just aren't that many anymore. And there isn't the loyalty from either side anymore to have someone stick around that long. And I honestly think he may have been one of a kind, but he's also the last of a breed. I just don't think there's going to be anyone. I mean, even Jerry West has spent time with the Grizzlies. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just sad. It came out of nowhere, even though he was 86 years old. You never can trust. Once you get over 80, every day is kind of an adventure anyway, if you're going to make it or not. But yeah, it's just sad. It as a Celtics fan, all of Boston is in mourning. It's all of our favorite uncle is or grandfather or great uncle or whatever father type figure, kind of quirky, kind of loud, but always on your side. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, if he loved you, it sounds like if he loved you, he loved you.
Yeah, he loved you, and they had a list of his all-time Tommy points. He talked to Paul Pierce about it because Paul Pierce, by far, has the most Tommy points in the history of the Celtics. His second is Rondo, actually. Rondo, I think, had 100, and Pierce had 160-something. And Pierce said that one of his greatest achievements is being the number one Tommy point winner ever. He still holds that as one of his greatest achievements. So
it's going to be right up there for what a football player in the 80s and 90s, and what's that? Well, that's my All Madden team award. It's
yeah,
that had to meant so much for for those guys, even though Madden only gave that to players who he called the games for. So it's there's 8 Cowboys on this.
Yeah.
So I guess go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm just looking at Heinsohn's stuff, though. He won championship in 57, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65, and retired.
It's crazy.
That's not so bad.
No. And guaranteed he never pointed at his ring and said, "Do you know I'm a Hall of Famer?"
He didn't have to. He could just point up at the rafters. See that number 15? Yeah, no one's worn it for 55 years at this point. So
I knew these old wrestlers when I worked on that novel for Chavo Guerrero Sr., which may or may one day ever see the light of day. I don't know. Those old school guys, they knew all the local cops because they were always getting drunk in their car. And it's just a different era. And, maybe LaRussa just comes from that era. I don't know. It's a strange thing that where they think it's almost like they feel like they're cool to sort of do that. I'm all right. It's a very different mentality. But yeah, when Chavo would tell me that there was this one wrestler called Wahoo Mcdaniel, who was when they were wrestling together in Texas. Because he'd get pulled over all the time for drunk driving and whatnot, and then they'd always pull him over. And he was there with him a couple times. "Oh, it's you, Wahoo," and just give him out some pictures, and 8x10s and shit. Different time. That was in the before time.
Yeah, very different time.
That was in the before social media time. So I guess next week, if we have nothing else, we can do a quick recap of how our categories will look for the U.S. Hall, and then when we can expect. That won't be out for another few months. There's going to be a lot of work on the back end to make sure that voting you can't vote more than once. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and someone else, the way that 2020 is going, tomorrow's Friday the 13th of 2020. Something terrible is going to happen. Right?
Oh, Jesus.
So who knows what else is going to happen this week, but that's probably a good basic topic to go through. So
I'm in Atlantic time. It's already Friday the 13th, 2020 here.
Oh, good luck with that.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to...
Sleep it off if you can, man. Just stay in bed.
I will take said advice, sir. As always, it's been a pleasure. Stay safe, Evan.
All right, talk to you later, man.
All right, bye. Thank you all so much for listening. Stay safe, everyone. Look for a lot more content coming through at notinhallofame.com.